Hello everyone and welcome to example 2 for absolute value inequalities. We're going to go through the steps and solve an example. In the first video I showed you the steps and wrote them down as we were doing it. Here are all the steps. If you didn't get a chance to write them down, you can pause it and do that now. But we're going to go through each step and do that for the following example. All right, so here's our example in this case. What we need to do first is, remember, step 1 is to isolate the absolute value. So what that means is get the absolute value by itself. In this case, that's a two-step process. I need to get rid of the plus 12 that happens after it and the negative 2 that happens in the front. You can do it in either order. I typically find that it's smoother doing the addition and subtraction first. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 12 on both sides. And then I'm going to rewrite this. So we get a negative 2, absolute value, x plus 5. And then plus 12 minus 12 is 0. So that's going to look like it disappears. And then 10 minus 12 is negative 2. Okay, so that's going to be the first part of step 1, and then for the second part, I'm going to need to get rid of this negative 2. So the opposite of multiplying by negative 2 is dividing by negative 2. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'm going to end up with the absolute value of x plus 5 is greater than 1. So remember, whenever you are multiplying or dividing both sides of an inequality by a negative number, you're going to have to flip the inequality. So here, since that 2 was negative, we're going to have to do that. So that's something that I had down at the bottom, something that's important to remember. Flip the inequality when you multiply or divide both sides by a negative number. All right, so if you don't have that written down, again, pause it and write that down. All right, so we did that. That's step 1. And so we're done with step 1. That's what happened here. Now we need to move on to step 2, which is to make two inequalities. Remember, one, we're just going to remove the absolute value. And the other, we're going to change the sign of the other side. Right, side got erased here, sorry. And we are going to flip the inequality and then remove the absolute value. So again, on the first one, all we do is remove the absolute value. So x plus 5 is greater than 1. But on the other one, and it doesn't really matter which one's on the right and left, that's up to you. And on the other one, we're going to remove the absolute value, change the sign, and make the other side negative. All right, so the inequality flipped, the 1 became negative, and the absolute value disappeared. If that 1 was already negative, you would change the sign to a positive, so in case that ever happens. All right, so once we are done with that, what we need to do is insert either an and or an or. And this happens after step 1. So we want to look right here when we do this. And we want to decide what it's going to be. So if the absolute value in this case is greater than the other side, then it's an or problem. Now, if greater than less than screws you up, you could always do it this way. If the big side is facing the absolute value, it's an or. If the small side is facing the absolute value, it's an and. And when I say small and big, I'm talking about the inequality. Right? So the open part right here is what I was looking at for the or, and the pointy part here is what I was looking at for the and. Right? And the open part at absolute value is or, pointy part at absolute value is and. And this is the open part, so this is going to be an or problem. All right, and then I'm going to go through and I'm going to solve both inequalities separately. It's going to be the same steps though, just different numbers. I'm going to subtract 5 on both sides, right? Same step, but one's a 1 and one's a negative 1. So plus 5 minus 5 is 0, so it looks like it disappears. And then 1 minus 5 is negative 4. Again, plus 5 minus 5 is 0, and then negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6. And don't forget your or. And that is our answer as an inequality. Either the number is less than negative 6 or bigger than negative 4. You can't write ors as a sandwich like in the last problem, so don't try. And then you want to graph it. In this case, if you want to graph, you just take the small number, put it on the left, the big number, put it on the right. In this case, it's not or equal to, so it's going to be an open circle instead of a closed at those points. And then when it's an or, it's usually going to point in opposite directions. Less than -6 means less than's going to the right. Greater than -4, less than goes to the left. Greater than goes to the right. And we have our graph. And that's our answers.